a longtime subscriber of the channel, you know that one of my favorite vehicles in the entire world is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, which means I have had quite the bright week, and especially bright, with this Tuscadero Pearl 2024 Jeep Wrangler 392 Final Edition. They call it the Final Edition because this was supposed to be the end of production for the 6.4-liter V8 powered Jeep Wrangler. However, Stellantis has done the typical Stellantis thing, and they have reintroduced it for the 2025 model year, which means this isn't any sort of final edition at all, even though it says final edition on it in multiple different places, which we will show you throughout this video. But I imagine if you are one of the lucky few who actually ordered and received a final edition 2024, you're probably a little bit cross with Stellantis for bringing it back for 2025. But since I do not own one of these, I am excited that a few more of them will be being produced, so one day maybe I will be able to have one. So you guys probably already know this car. It's been out for a couple of years, and I think it is just the best. It takes this rugged off-road formula of the Jeep Wrangler that we already know and some love, and turns it up to 11 with the addition of this V8 6.4-liter SRT engine, but they don't really change anything else, which is why I love it so much. It's terrifying. It doesn't really drive that great, but that's why I love it more than almost anything else on the market. So let's talk about this engine. 6.4-liter naturally aspirated V8, 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. And since this is a Jeep, I can open the hood from the outside, and we'll just get that out of the way right away. We'll show you what this engine looks like. It's your normal run-of-the-mill SRT engine that you would see in anything else like a Charger or Challenger Scat Pack. And as you can see here, we do have some unique touches for the Wrangler variant with these gold badged 392 valve cover covers. Those aren't the valve covers, more of an engine cover type thing. And then you can see we also have the Hydro Guide kind of system that allows you to wade in water and not hydrolock the engine. So this is still a serious off-roader, even though it is kind of built to just make noise on the street. We have off-roaded a couple of these on the Topher channel, on the Winding Road channel, and they are always a ton of fun. But today, we're just going to commute this thing into town because that is the Topher Drives way. And I actually filmed one of these late last year in October. I was really sad in that video saying, oh, this is probably the last one I'll ever drive. Well, here's this one, which is still a 24 final edition, and we'll probably drive another one next year as well. So I am a very happy guy knowing that this car is sticking around. And let's shut this hood properly so we don't have it fly up on us on the highway. There we go. That is shut. Love this functional hood scoop as well on the hood. So let's talk about this color, Tuscadero Pearl. This is a limited edition color, although I take everything Stellantis says with a grain of salt. This color could be back for 2025, but they call it limited Tuscadero Pearl, which means I have been driving a real-life Barbie Jeep all week. Emily and I have been having a blast ripping around town in this thing. It's so much fun, and it makes me start to understand why people love Jeep Wranglers overall. Obviously, I love the 392 so much. Never really been a big fan of the regular Wrangler, and I feel like that kind of demonstrates how special this version of the Wrangler is. So let's poke around it real quick. I mean, normal Wrangler stuff. You guys know this car by now, but split folding rear cargo area. The glass opens independently from the hatch, which I always like. Tons of these little Jeep logos. Jeep loves their little Easter eggs that they put everywhere. As we know, this one is special for the final edition. You can see we have our specs here, our horsepower and torque rating. Also, this reminds me, so behind the 6.4 liter, we have the ZF 8HP 8-speed automatic transmission, which makes this even more of a legit SRT style product. It's the same transmission that you would get in a Charger or Challenger as well. Things have been detuned a bit. It's got about 15 less horsepower than a Scat Pack, and the transmission doesn't fire off gears in the same sort of way that it does in a Scat Pack or a Hellcat, but the soul of everything is still in here, and I just absolutely adore this thing. I'm glad the sun has come out a little bit to shine some light on this pink metallic paint. Anything to make this more ridiculous, I think, is valid, so this color, this might be the choice if you're going to get one of these. Step in the back seat, where you'll notice one big change from the regular 2024 Wrangler 392 to the final edition, and that is black interior. Rejoice, you are not forced to have red interior in your Wrangler 392 like you were before the final edition, or if you still don't opt for the final edition model, you're forced to get red interior, and that does not depend on which exterior color you get. You could have that crazy highlighter green color, you could have Tuscadero, and your interior is still forced to be red. But with the final edition, you also only have one choice, but it's black with the gold accenting, which means you have less of an opportunity to have a color clash in an emergency. So before we jump in and start it up and go for a drive, let's talk about a few other things that make this the final edition. So obviously all the final edition badges, and you get some of the other options and accessories that you would have to pay extra for on the regular Wrangler 392. This final edition is about a $10,000 premium over the regular Jeep, which means this thing as spec today is $106,000. Man, things are getting so expensive, but I mean, with this being in the same sort of bracket as the Bronco Raptor, it makes sense, and well, I know what I would choose. The worn winch is something you get standard with the final edition. This is a couple $1,000 option on the regular 392 Jeep. And also just all these different adornments, the black interior. I don't know that I would necessarily say that this is a valuable $10,000 package, but just to have final edition written on the thing, I guess is cool enough. If you want to get into a regular Wrangler 392, they do start still just over $90,000. I imagine that price is going to go up for 2025, as everything does, but for 2024 also, just apart from the final edition, they now all have the Extreme Recon package, which gets you these 35-inch all-terrain KO2 BF Goodrich tires. It just looks quite proper. Okay. Let's jump in. Actually, before we jump in, I want to show you that this has the optional $4,000 Sky One Touch Power top. When I was on the configurator earlier, it showed this only being available on the final edition, but I swear the one that we drove last year, which was not a final edition, I feel like it had this top, if I'm remembering correctly. I guess I could have referenced my video, but I did not. So someone in the comments will. But for some reason it shows this only being available, but I bet if you ask Jeep nicely, they'll put it on your regular 392 as well. So let's jump in. We're gonna start it. Actually, you know what? Let's do a remote start. Why not? Start it from the back. Stellantis, big on their remote start. Here's our key, which is huge, and it still has the switchblade on it, like if you were to be starting an older Jeep or a base model Jeep. But this serves as your emergency key. Okay, anyways, let's just go ahead and fire it up. So I got the performance exhaust toggled to on. It does have an active exhaust. You can make it a little bit quieter if you want to respect your neighbors, but nothing about this car really demonstrates respect. So I'd probably just ride with it open all the time. Why not? As you can see here, we are up to temp, and you guys just saw me put a full tank of fuel in this car. I have filmed a video for the Winding Road Magazine channel since getting fuel, so we've already drained like 1/8 of a tank. I imagine by the time we get downtown, it's gonna be probably a 1/4 tank gone. So $75 down the drain, but worth every penny to hear this noise. Soft limiter at 4,000 RPM, but it's such a cool noise. It's kind of unique from its car counterparts, the Challenger, the Charger, even the Durango. Obviously, with this exhaust having to be routed in vastly different ways, with this not being a unibody vehicle, it does sound excellent. It's very raspy, it's very bassy, and since this is a Wrangler, not much sound deadening. Every orifice of this car comes off, the doors, the roof, everything, the windshield. You can hear just about everything, which for a car like this is very good. For a V6 Wrangler, I don't know about that, but for this, it just makes so much sense. So inside, I already kind of briefed you on this interior. I love this Rubicon 392 stitching here in the seats with the gold. I love the gold tow hooks, all of the gold accenting. I was a little disappointed that with the 2024 non-final edition, they got rid of all that in lieu of red stitching and everything in here, but glad to be back in a proper true 392 with the gold trimmings. Lots of off-road tech. We're not going to be using any of that today. We've got front and rear lockers, we've got sway bar disconnect, we've got all of these inputs for auxiliary accessories if you want to add light bars and things like that. Window switches live in the middle, of course, because the doors come off. We have a heated steering wheel, heated seats. Here's our button to toggle on and off our active exhaust. Probably going to leave that on until we jump on the highway, just to give you guys an idea of how quiet this can get. I do have a Monroney in the glove box. We'll take a look at that. $106,780. Our base price, as you can see there, just over 90 grand. And actually, I spoke a little bit too highly of this. It's an $8,450 package. And we'll put all this in the description so you guys know what all it entails. But let's talk about fuel economy. 14 combined. What have I been getting? Not that good. Although it might have reset once I... Oh, 12.4. Okay, that's what I've been getting this week. That's pretty dreadful. But, you know, it's what you expect. And I've just been going full throttle pretty much everywhere. 16 on the highway. That is pretty generous. I don't know that you would really see that, but who cares? You don't buy this car for the fuel economy. You buy it for V8 noises and fun and off-road capability, if that's your thing. Let's put this mechanical parking brake down. You can see we have final edition here on our shifter, and our shift button is red, our shifter unlock. Into reverse, you can see a very high definition reverse camera. This is important because as this is a Wrangler, it's meant to go off-road. You have to have very clear cameras. So if you go into this menu, you can also pull up your forward-facing camera, which kind of just shows you the bull bar up front, but it also shows you where your wheels are heading with those little yellow lines. And for some reason, I suspect it's because the doors come off, although you'd still have to have your mirrors. So I don't know. There's no 360 camera on this, which I would like to see for my 106 grand. Wireless Apple CarPlay, and we have an Alpine sound system in this, which we will make sure to test once we are out on the highway. Cool. Let's go for a drive. Let's make some noise, and let's remind ourselves why we love the Wrangler 392 so much. Central locking going off there. Not quite as aggressive as a G-Wagon, but it lets you know. You got to be careful with this car because if you go out and you just flat-footed everywhere, you're revving it out, you're going to get in trouble, and not necessarily with the law, but potentially with yourself. This is a little bit of a sketchy vehicle. And that's because, like I said earlier, it is still a Jeep Wrangler. I mean, I'm sure there have been little tweaks here and there to make this even physically be able to handle the near 500 horsepower powertrain under the hood, but it still behaves like any other Wrangler. It's all over the place. It's constantly wandering. The body roll is crazy. When you get on it, the front end lifts up. It feels like it's going to backflip. So you really got to be careful. But that's why I love this thing so much. It's the impending doom, the impending peril. You know there's always a chance it's going to kill you. And you don't really get that anymore with modern cars. This is one of the most old school feeling modern cars that there is. And the fact that it's coming back for 2025 is some of the best news I've received all year. When I read that article in like April or March, whenever they announced that this was coming back, I was filled with so much joy. You don't really feel rushed. Like, I'm not super thrilled to be driving behind this Ram van right now, but the throttle response and everything isn't so aggressive that you feel like you should just be flying everywhere. Let's bump our stick over into manual mode. We have the steering wheel mounted paddle shifters. This will also speed up the shifts of this otherwise somewhat lazy tune on the ZF 8-speed automatic. There is still about a 1 second delay though, so you have to very precisely time your shifts here. Makes everything a bit more aggressive. You get those snaps and snarls between changes, which you don't get when you leave the Jeep in automatic mode. What I love too is that you can shift it down here on the floor. Always like to see that integrated. We are creeping up on rush hour, so we are going to have some traffic, but that's okay. This is a real world living with the Wrangler 392, so we'll embrace it. The 8-speed is also only going to rev match your gears if you're really high up in the rev range. So if you're downshifting at 3,000 RPM, it kind of downshifts like my 1998 Lexus GS 400, very lazily. See, there are a lot of work through the steering to get this to go in a straight line. And we don't need the corner. We don't need to fly around the corner today, because these KO2s, they don't really like fast cornering. They pretty much only like off-roading. That's their favorite thing to do. All right, I'm gonna go back into automatic. We'll give it the beans after this corner, and you can kind of hear how this behaves when it's shifting its own gears. Warning, high cube. Me too, man, me too. Remarkably quick. You may think that it doesn't feel very fast because we're so numb to horsepower numbers nowadays. 470 horsepower doesn't even sound like that much, but it is quick and it's terrifying. And that's lovely. That is really lovely. We're going to go over here and just do one brief acceleration. Very, very safe traction control system. It cuts in anytime you're even breathing on the power around a corner. That traction control light is blinking, so if you want to do any sort of quick driving, you got to have that turned off. All right, we're going to go back into auto. We're going to stop and we're going to do an acceleration. Since I've driven a few of these at this point, I have learned that the best thing to do is to just hit the throttle. If you brake torque this, the stability control gets very confused and it actually cuts power. So this is faster to just quickly switch from brake to throttle and just full throttle out. So we're going to wait for this car to pass here and then we'll take off. And here we go. Rapid acceleration. I do think if you put a set of slicks on this, it would lift the front wheels off the ground. Genuinely, I do believe that. This is the closest thing we have in America to a G-Wagon, because very sort of similar dynamics with that thing, obviously much more refined, but I like that this isn't refined. It's just... Traction back on. Let's see what it's like to daily drive the Wrangler 392. We're going to jump on the highway. We'll talk about what that's like. And I'm actually going to insert a little section from earlier. I took Emily to the airport in this, so just a couple quick fun minutes of that we'll show you. All right, you joined Barbie and Ken on the highway. Or is it Barbie and M? Since I'm driving, I'm probably Barbie, right? I'm driving her to the airport, and this is the perfect airport drop-off vehicle because, as we know, DTW's airport tunnels allow me to play the sound of the 6.4 liter V8. I wonder if you can open this at speed. Oh, you can.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh my God, it's cold out.
It's okay, it's just temporarily. All right, that's good enough. We'll just open it that much. That's step one. Step two, we're gonna turn the performance exhaust back on. Step three, I'm gonna put the Jeep into manual mode. We have to behave somewhat because there's a lot of traffic, so you want to take it over like 45. Yeah. Normal airport Ubers don't usually do this, do they?
No.
Sorry if you wanted to make a subtle arrival to the airport.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well there we go. Jeep Wrangler 392 Rubicon Final Edition Airport Shuttle. Let's get your bag. Here you are, madam. Hi. It's so intoxicating. I was talking to the TOPher earlier on the phone about this. He was just asking me how my time was going with it. And he said, it's one of the best times you can have with your pants on. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Oh my goodness. I'll never forget the first time I drove one of these was at the Mama, I feel like it was the fall rally. It was like the COVID year in 2020 maybe, or 2021. And I had no idea about this. I've never been a Jeep guy. I've never looked into these. I just didn't care. And I went and I drove one. And I came back a changed man, because the way this car makes you feel is genuinely unlike anything else on the current market. Steering has some heft to it, and really only at low speeds, because then once you're actually at speed, say 45 miles an hour, you can do this and nothing happens. I mean, that's a huge amount of steering angle, and it's just numb. Which to an extent is okay when you're driving a 250 horsepower regular Jeep Wrangler, but when you double the power, it's a bit sketchy. Throttle response and transmission tuning in this Wrangler 392 is telepathic. That's not surprising, considering what we know driving the Hellcats and the Scat Pack cars. This transmission behaves the same under normal driving conditions. So when you're just merging on the highway, driving around to something like that, the 8HP delivers butter smooth gear changes, and it always knows the right gear to be in. You can see I'll breathe on the throttle here. It drops a couple of gears instantly. It knows right where I want to be all the time. Okay, let's, for the first time in the video, turn the performance exhaust off. Yes, big truck, brother. Smells like America and freedom. Okay, sorry. Let's go ahead and turn this performance exhaust off, which over the wind noise, you're probably not even going to be able to tell the difference, but tones it down a little bit, I guess. Not really a super noticeable amount, but we'll leave it off for the highway section. I'll tell you what, I hate seeing that hood flutter, because I know how that latch is shut. And those latches, they don't feel like quality items, so it's a little bit of a worry. But I think at 78, nothing's happened. I think we're probably pretty safe. Going down the highway, this drives like any other Jeep Wrangler. You're constantly steering, you're constantly listening to wind and tire noise, but we can't fault it for this. You don't buy this car for it to be a luxurious, quiet experience. You go and get a G-Wagon, you go and get a Toyota Land Cruiser if you want your off-roader to be luxurious. A Jeep Wrangler is not that car. It's not that guy. It's not that Jeep. So this is miserably loud, But that's the way Jeeps are. And I wouldn't want a Jeep to not be like this, because then it wouldn't be true to its spirit of a Jeep Wrangler. All right, we'll make a pass here with the exhaust in quiet so you guys can hear the difference. That valve is still gonna open over 4,000 RPM. But below that, it is actually quite quiet. And we might actually try it out again once we get downtown just to give you a better idea of it. When you're not concentrated on steering, which normally you are, but if you do have a chance to calm down a bit, you can rest your elbows in two actually very comfy positions here. Driver's side door panel is pretty squishy, though it does have a firm material on it, I suspect because being a Jeep Wrangler, an off-road vehicle, they have to make these materials inside pretty tough to be able to withstand any sort of mud or dirt that gets on it, rubbed in and things like that. Center console is pretty squishy as well, and ergonomically, the seating position in this is fantastic. You have to sit high up to be able to see obstacles off-road, but you're also benefited by great visibility in normal driving situations. I can see almost over this entire hood. I've got the seat in the lowest possible position, so you could also be somebody that's quite short and drive a Wrangler with no problem. And this also goes for using everything in here. This infotainment system works great. The climate control is right in reach. I've got no complaints with actually living with this Jeep. It's really not even hard to get in and out of, you know. Let's very quickly test this Alpine sound system while we're still rolling at 70 miles an hour, so you can get an idea for what it's like on the highway. Yes, that is all I wanted. If you're under a certain speed, the reason this is called the Sky One Touch Top is because you can automatically open it with one touch, but if you're traveling very quickly, you have to hold the button and you can kind of position this exactly where you want it. But let's talk about this sound system. Lots of power. I'm not going to talk this up too much because the clarity of it isn't the best, but being that this sound system often is going to have to compensate with this roof being open, with the doors being off, it has to be very, very powerful, and it is, which means it's also able to compensate when you have the roof up and you're on the highway with all of that wind and road noise. It kind of makes you forget about it, which I do like very much. And in a setting like this with some other large vehicles, including the Bronco Raptor, which is just such a wide thing, this is still somewhat narrow. I mean, it's the same size as a regular Wrangler with the Extreme Recon package. So what I've always loved about Wranglers is that they are kind of the perfect size. And this is no, classic air-cooled Porsche or something that's going to give you insane driving feel. But it's the overall soul, the ethos of this car that just speaks to me as an enthusiast so much. And someone who's not even a Jeep enthusiast, I just like driving this on the street. I would never really have any desire to take this off-road. I just have so much fun just like mobbing around town in this that's all I would need out of it. And I'd have it as a second fun vehicle. Not to mention, you can just drive over all of this stuff. Normally I'd be dodging all these potholes. Today I'm hitting them on purpose. All right guys, well, that's gonna wrap up our drive for the most part today. We've still got to do the parking structure, which will be fun with this soundtrack, but let's go ahead and wrap up our thoughts here on the Wrangler 392. Nothing's changed, and I think that's good. Every time I drive one of these, obviously I've driven more and more cars in between, but it never wears on me. This car never gets old. I never get bored of it. It's always just as much fun as I remember it being, and the same can't be said for some other cars. So I think that goes to show that something like this that's just so raw and visceral and loud, when Stellantis goes all out and they really try to make a good performance product, They never fail, and I think this is a good testament to that. And I hope that some of their old school stuff comes back. The CEO just resigned a couple of days before this video is being filmed, so maybe we'll have some old school stuff.
Welcome. Please proceed into the lot.
But who knows? Okay, we're gonna put the windows up, which are not auto up, and put the roof back. 7'8" clearance. We are just clearing in here. Actually, here's a good comparison. If you're ever wondering Wrangler versus Bronco, there they are right next to each other. In some ways, it's kind of like just driving a skateboard with a V8 glued to the front. And now we can do this. And then if anyone's up here on the roof, they won't know it's me. Barbie Jeeps don't sound like that. All right, guys. I think we've had enough fun for today. Well, I'm going to continue having fun after I turn the camera off, but I appreciate you all riding along with me on this. And if you haven't already, go out and check my previous video on the Wrangler 392. That one was a whole lot of fun as well. A little bit less in depth, but why not? Also, didn't say in the beginning, but everybody probably already knows, this is full-time four-wheel drive. You do have a 4-high, a 4-high part-time, and then a 4-low. There's no way to put this into two-wheel drive, which we all would enjoy, that feature, obviously, but we don't have that. Maybe in some sort of a future model, but with this already being a final edition sort of precursor, we probably won't ever see it, but that's okay. Cool. All right, well, let's jump out. Give you one last look here at this Tuscadero Pearl Wrangler 392. One of my favorite cars in the entire world. Such a special product, and thank you, Stellantis, for hyperextending our time here with the Wrangler 392. But that'll wrap it up for us today. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you have any questions about this that haven't yet been answered in the past couple of videos between my channel and the Topher channel, make sure you leave those in the comments. But that'll do it for us today, and we will see ya in the next one. Take care.